Where to Hunt podcast. It's okay.
Hi, I'm Dan Small, host of Outdoor Wisconsin, and I listen to Where to Hunt.
It's okay.
I'm Kurt Geyer with Working Class Bow Hunter. I listen to Where to Hunt podcast, and it's decent.
It's all right.
Hey, this is Bud Fisher with Catching Deers, and I think the Where to Hunt podcast is all right.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Where to Hunt podcast, the podcast that connects public land hunting enthusiasts, aka the okayest podcast in the Midwest. This is episode 131. I'm your host, Eric Clark, and our co-host, Mr. Greg Tubbs. Where you at, buddy?
Here I am. I'm coming to you from my living room in beautiful Lake Mills, Wisconsin.
Nice. I like your living room. You had the fireplace.
Is that pretty cheesy?
No, man. Well, you're a pretty cheesy guy, and we are in Wisconsin where cheese is abundant. Cheese curds, nacho cheese, all kinds of cheese.
Yeah.
The fresh cheese
and beer.
curds. Lots of beer, lots of cows.
Nacho cheese.
Dude, you were rocking a good fire the other night. It looked really nice and enticing and cozy.
I wish I could say it was outside, but due to our wonderful weather pattern that we've been having here through the Midwest, we elected to do it on the inside indoor fireplace. Gave it one last hurrah, and hopefully everything from here on out is going to get done in the fire pit outside in the backyard. So hopefully past all that crappy weather.
You got a bonfire?
I need some nice weather to try and fill my turkey tag in the next couple days.
There you go. That a girl. You got a bonfire pit in the backyard, like a dugout one? I said that a girl. But I was asking, do you have a bonfire pit, like dugout? Or
I actually got like a...
Yeah.
No, actually, I don't have a bonfire pit that's in the works after I cut down this massive ash tree that the borer got. But for now, I just got one of those movable chimney things that's screened in all the way around and keeps embers from landing on things and lighting them on fire. So
that's good.
It works for now, but I'll be wrecking my backyard here soon to make some improvements.
Well, fun, dude. I'm excited. And once this all ends, we'll have to come over and cash some beers in person. I just got like one of those, it just sits on my patio on the cement. That's nothing fancy. Anyway, let's do our sponsorship callouts. We want to shout out to the company that keeps us energized. I've been drinking, metric tons of it. Backwoods Grind Coffee Company. If you haven't heard of Backwoods Grind and you're first hearing this now, I'd be shocked. But if you are, be sure to head on over to backwoodsgrind.com and take a big whiff. Waft it in. The smell of coffee is abundant. And when you decide on the kind of coffee you want, whether that's a sampler pack or a specific blend, you can enter in code W2H podcast and get 10% off to keep some money in your pocket. You can also do a subscription with those guys to save some more money and make sure your coffee shows up every month. So it's pretty neat. It comes very, very fresh to your door. They roast it themselves and then they'll grind it up to your specs. And that's it. It's pretty great. Also, head over to Gumleaf USA. I wear Gumleaf wellies and the Royal Zips. I think you have the same, although there is another pair called the Vikings and a couple others too. But they are handmade from scratch. Where are they made, Greg?
I was going to make you say it.
No.
You're probably already having a brain fart, aren't you? Is that why you're asking me?
No, I never looked it up from last time. I wanted you to say it.
Are you trying to test me?
Yeah, I want you to tell me. Where are they made?
They're made in England, man.
Fucker.
Where are they made? I just told you.
They're made in England, and if you go to their website, they have a really cool video. You can just watch them make it. It's like really one of those one of those videos that you watch where you just oddly satisfying videos, right? That's what I was gonna say. Look, they're great boots. They're Vibram soles. They're 85% natural rubber, which, if you don't know, a lot of the boots you'll buy at a big box store have a lot of plastic or PVC in them, so they break down a lot quicker. You'll pay a good amount for them, but they're not going to last nearly as long as the gum leafs. And we're walking proof of that. So head on over there to gumleafusa.com, enter in code W2H2020 and get 10% off. And I'd love it if you would continue to do the vectorcustomshop.com call out.
All right. So if you're looking for a nice heavy carbon built to your spec arrow, look no further than Vector Custom Shop. VectorCustomShop.com. You can get a test pack, which is 2 arrows of your weight and spine type, a half dozen or a dozen. You're rocking the Ethics insert-outsert system, and you can go anywhere from 45 to 175 grains up front. Enter in where to hunt and save 10% off those arrows. How's that?
Well, you just get better and better at it every week. So I think I'm really proud of you, and I'm really loving my Vector Custom Shop arrows. I did a little video about them a week or two ago, just to show the penetration that I'm getting in contrast to the Black Eagles that I was shooting before, Twizzlers. Now I'm shooting an adult arrow.
Sure. Twizzlers.
Yeah. I want to welcome our guest on the line,
Well,
Greg Traynor. So it's going to get confusing with 2 Gregs on the show, but Greg Traynor is the accessible hunter. What's up, Greg? Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here tonight and talk with you guys. I really appreciate it.
Hey, we're happy that you're taking time out of your schedule and day to be here. Why don't you take a second, tell the audience, who you are and where you're from, and what do you like to hunt, public land, private land, what do you like to shoot, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Sure. My name's Greg Traynor. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I grew up hunting mostly white-tailed deer and turkey, a little bit of small game. Those are probably my favorites. I like to hunt deer and turkey. Right now is our spring turkey season. I haven't gotten out last week. The weather was a little bit bad here. We went from snow a couple of days to 60-degree weather today, so I'm still looking forward to getting my turkey here in the spring. We grew up here in Pennsylvania and traveled around a little bit for work, and I'm 52 years old, and I'm a person with a spinal cord injury. Just enjoy hunting in the outdoors. That's what I really look forward to, and all the people I get to meet and the friends I get to go hunting with. That's kind of what keeps me going.
That's good to hear. Pennsylvania, I just talked to someone from New York like minutes before we jumped on here. They said it's snowing. Is it snowing over by you too?
It was snowing Friday and Saturday, and it was cold this morning, but no snow. The sun's out. It's kind of a nice day today, but for 2 days it was just crazy weather here.
Man, this whole spring transition and COVID stuff is just a tricky time to do anything. But have you gotten out and done some turkey hunting, through all of this?
I have not. I've been really abundantly cautious with the COVID-19. I've kind of stayed inside, and really we're only doing some shopping for groceries, that kind of thing. But the itch is really getting to me, and I think if I just kind of go out next week by myself, the weather's going to be good. And we do some public land hunting. We got some great state game lands here in southwestern PA, and I think I'm going to get out and do a little bit of hunting regardless, and not try to be around anybody. But I haven't been out yet, but it's really got me going now that the weather's getting a little bit better here. I definitely need to get out and get in a ground blind and see if I can call one in.
That's exciting. That's super cool. So let's I don't know, I'd like to just kind of dive right in and unpack some things. As the accessible hunter, why don't you tell us a little bit about, you said you got a spinal cord injury around 21 years ago, which is interesting to think about. You just shared your age. I'm 34. So, that'd have been 3-4 years ago if that were me. And just thinking about, how you would navigate that. So like, what was that like, and how fast did you kind of go to the mindset of I'm still going to do what I love? What was that transition like for you?
Well, unfortunately, when I had my injury, I was 31, and I've always been kind of a type A personality. I've, been pretty athletic growing up, and I kind of have a pretty strong mindset whenever I set my mind to something. But nothing could have prepared me for the injury. I was living actually in Massachusetts on Cape Cod, and it was a diving accident. I was in waist deep water on a lake, and I thought I dove out, and must have just dove down and hit my head, and I broke my neck at the C4 or 5 level, which basically paralyzed me from my chest down. And I didn't have any arm movement at the time, and they life flighted me to Boston to Brigham and Women's Hospital, and I had 2 surgeries on my neck and a cage put around it, and basically was in an induced coma in Boston for a month. And I don't really remember any of that time in Boston, Brigham and Women's, but my family transferred me down to Shepherd Center in Atlanta, Georgia, which is a specialty spinal cord injury hospital. And that was probably the best decision that anybody could make for me, because Shepherd Center really understands spinal cord injury, and they gave me a lot of the tools to cope with my injury and to show me that, I could still be successful and still be able to do the things that I wanted to do. I just had to do it a different way. And it took me a long time to get physically strong enough to want to go hunting again. And actually, it took me a long time to get mentally strong enough again. But whenever I was at Shepherd, one of the first things they did was they kind of did an interview with me and found out what my likes and interests were. And I told them I was a really big bow hunter. I had been bow hunting since I was 15 years old, and that was a passion of mine. And they kind of said, well, we do a lot of target shooting. You can still go hunting again. And they took me down to the gymnasium and showed me some adaptive equipment and different mounts and a trigger activator that was kind of made like a Gatling gun. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. It's a BMF trigger activator. A gentleman named Norman York made it, and he donated a bunch to Shepherd Center, and they got me shooting a 22 using it. And after I figured out that I could still go hunting again and still do things differently, I kind of started developing a plan that, maybe things would be all right. I wasn't really ready to hear it at the time that, hey, I want to go hunting next week, but that stuck in the back of my mind for a while that, I could still get out in the outdoors and still do things. It just took me a little bit of time to get strong enough to do it.
The mental part of that must have been, I would imagine, the hardest part. You got to make up your mind before you can get your body to do anything. That would be really challenging. But we talked about, a little bit. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, please.
Oh, you do have a choice, but really you don't. I mean, everybody has good days and bad days. Before my spinal cord injury, I had good days and bad days too. And, you have to find a way to push forward. And I know that sounds like a cliche, but one of the things I learned at Shepherd Center really early was to find one thing every day to be thankful for and to concentrate on the positive. And heck, not to lie, some days it was we were having Cheerios for breakfast instead of scrambled eggs. You have to search for things to be thankful for. But I think attitude goes a long way. And if you can see the better part of things and not always concentrate on the negative, I think you're better off and can, move forward with things.
That's a good, I believe in the quote, Colin Powell said, optimism is a perpetual force multiplier, or perpetual optimism is a force multiplier. I believe in, if you think optimistically about something, the outcome automatically is already in your favor versus thinking pessimistically about something. I have to imagine you need to be some sort of eternal optimist, to get through some of that stuff. But what's it what did life start to look like, beyond the mental transition? Like, how did you start to like figure things out? Like, I wouldn't even know where to go. And we're talking about a time frame, mind you, this is, 20-ish years ago. Things were much different then, right? The iPhone didn't come out until 2008. We're still talking about, the early 2000s.
It was definitely a different time, and technology really was in its infancy as far as spinal cord injury. To give you an example, like home controls, like how you turn on your lights or answer your phone and things. Shepherd Center was, the state-of-the-art hospital specializing in spinal cord injuries, and they recommended a computer system to control my home. Well, that computer system was called Multimedia Max, and it cost $15,000 to control lights and to make phone calls and things like that. Well, now, Amazon Alexa does all that for $99 and works extremely well, so much better than Max ever did. So the type of technology that we had was just different, but Shepherd gave me a really good starting point that there was a lot of different ways to do things. And then after my injury, and I sold my house on the Cape and I moved back to Pennsylvania to be closer to family, I decided after I got a little bit stronger to go back to school, and I got my master's in rehabilitation counseling and assistive technology from the University of Pittsburgh. So I was able to keep up with different ways of doing things to use technology to my favor. And then I started thinking about hunting again and different ways to do that. And I contacted Buckmasters, their disabled hunting foundation, and they actually sent me a really simple mount, and they sent me a Horton crossbow. And that was back in 2010. And that started me on hunting again. I was able to use the BMF trigger activator that I had seen at Shepherd Center. That stuck in my head that's how I'm going to pull the trigger, is using my arm and using my wrist to bump that trigger. And I spent a lot of time at the range, sighting in that crossbow and kind of moving left and right just a couple inches where I had just a little bit of movement using that mount. And up and down, I didn't have a lot of movement, but I had a little bit of movement, and that was the start of it.
That's pretty cool. Did you have a good support system around you with, friends, family, loved ones that help kind of fetch arrows down range, or hopefully you had some good folks around you to kind of help you through some of that stuff? Even just a task like that sounds daunting.
I do. I absolutely do. One of the things about high-level injury or any type of change like that is you find out who your real friends are and who were just kind of like ancillary friends. A lot of the people that I worked with dropped off the face of the earth really quick. But the friends I had from high school and, growing up, they stuck with me. So I always had that core group of 3 or 4 really good buddies that I grew up with, and, I could depend on them for anything. If I called them in the middle of the night and said I needed something, they were right there, and my family, of course, too. And when the chips are down, you really find out who has your back and who doesn't. And I was fortunate that I had really good friends and family that basically, helped me and enabled me to go on crazy adventures and to be able to travel and go hunting. And I met some really good people that have foundations that take people hunting as well. And when I was really newly injured, I relied on them for a lot of advice and how to do things. And then I would adapt that technology and kind of make it my own and make things a little bit better so that it worked better for me. But yeah, I'm fortunate. I'm definitely blessed with a good support system.
That's good to hear. I couldn't imagine going through anything like that, but having, like I said, you find out who your friends are pretty quick, and that's both good and bad, right? Maybe you weren't surprised to see some ones that you shed go away anyways, but the ones that end up rising to the occasion, it kind of overcompensates for any of the lost ones, I think. That's good to hear. So what?
Absolutely. And I think, go ahead. Sorry.
No, yeah, there's a bit of a delay, so I apologize. I'm trying my best to not be my interrupting self. So, but I was just going to ask, what was the first experience out like to rekindle yourself with nature and be out that way? You know, what were some of those initial thoughts and feelings like? I mean, I probably would have cried, to be honest. Like, I don't know if I could have held back tears from something like that. I'm even just talking about it right now, I'm getting a little choked up. Not almost. I'm almost there. Hearing your story already has gotten me kind of thinking through things. Maybe talk a little bit about that.
Sure. One of the first things you have to think about is access to the outdoors. And I'm a high-level quadriplegic, and I'm using a power chair. So people that are in manual chairs might have a little bit of a different experience. I'm just talking about myself. Using a power chair, you have to really kind of be careful where you go. The chair itself weighs like 400 pounds, and they're not made for the outdoors. Nature's not ADA accessible. We always laugh and joke, me and my buddies, and say that. And at the time, whenever I first started hunting, you didn't have your action track chairs, your track fabs. You didn't have the outdoor wheelchairs. So I had to basically hunt on the fringes. I hunted basically in people's backyards or kind of urban or suburban areas where I had friends that had some property, and they said, hey, we have some deer coming in at the end of the property. Why don't you do that? So I was rolling down through people's driveways and across their lawns and setting up ground blinds and going out for short periods of time and hunting that way and gaining a little bit of success doing that. And there was also a group in Pittsburgh, Whitetail Management, and one of my first successful hunts was in a cemetery, believe it or not. And we had a good time. I was able to get a really nice 8-point in a doe with those guys, and that was my first successful hunt. Was in a cemetery in Pittsburgh, close to a children's hospital in the city. So it was kind of a wild time, and just a great group of guys. And you wouldn't think you would have that much fun in the city,
Yeah, that's cool. We just did an episode on suburban hunting a couple weeks back. And I think you mentioned that you actually did some hunting in Wisconsin. Which group got you out in our neck of the woods all the way from Pittsburgh?
That was UFTA, the United Federation for Disabled Archers. And those guys were actually the first time I went out of state on a hunt after my spinal cord injury. We hunted at a camp up near Madison, and those guys could not do enough for us. My brother John and I drove up, and it was a great experience. It was super cold, but I was so excited to go out and get a chance at some of the bigger deer. Wisconsin, you guys are known for some big bucks, and we had a really good time, and they fed us well, and I got to meet a lot of people that had disabilities of different forms, and they treated me really well. So that's a great organization, probably close to you guys.
Yeah, I'm hearing about them from you for the first time. I'm not sure, Greg, have you heard of any organizations like that? I know you're close from Madison, actually.
I have not, but I think, yeah, I know Wings Over Wisconsin does something like they had something on Larry Smith Outdoors not too long ago, maybe a year or two ago, that they were showing off the track chairs to get disabled hunters out. And I know our DNR and some of the areas around me here has been pushing to try and put together a few areas for disabled hunters, over duck ponds and things like that. So little at a time, if we get more and more people involved with it, then we could see that become, those ideas come to fruition.
I hunt some property over, it's low lake unit in the Kettle Moraine here in Wisconsin. I haven't hunted there in a little while, but they have some public properties out that way. And I know there's, some disabled access out there because I doing some scouting and exploring, and I was like, oh, look at this. This is great. There's like a whole path out there, and there's like a blind that's, built out of wood and stuff like that. And that's what it's for. And I know a buddy of mine that I lost touch with now, but when I was in college, he's a big hunter, in a wheelchair, and he talked about going on a lot of different hunts. And there's even certain times when he can go on hunts to make sure that he's getting that access that he needs and hopefully getting eyes on, game, which is pretty cool.
I think a lot of people that are newly injured or trying hunting for the first time with a disability will go on group hunts. And it's a great experience because people have so many things figured out for you and they can kind of guide you. And then after you get your feet wet and kind of experience a few hunts, then you want to do things on your own or maybe with friends and family like you used to do. And I know here in Pennsylvania with the state game lands, they have access that is wheelchair accessible, and is the hunting population gains, gets older, and the Game Commission really tries to keep people hunting. I think they're improving access not only for people in wheelchairs, but older hunters as well that can't go as far into the woods and want to hunt out of accessible blinds. And I think the Game Commissions are doing a lot better job than they ever did.
That's pretty cool. That follows the R3 movement a little bit. The recruit, reactivate and retain. That probably falls under the reactivate and retain side of things. And recruit too. Hey, you can go hunt. Here's some areas. That's a good point. It's good to hear that they're doing a good job. Greg?
Absolutely.
There's that delay. How have you evolved since the 2010s? We're 10 years from your first trip back out. What do things look like now? What has that evolution been like for you in terms of like your equipment and how you have success afield with either a crossbow or a rifle? What kind of things have you done?
Sure. I started off with the simple mount from Buckmaster's, which was basically a stick that was holding my crossbow, and I attached it to my wheelchair, and I had a little bit of left and right movement. And a buddy of mine, he and I developed a different mount, and he welded it up for me. We kind of designed it that it would hold either my rifle, my crossbow, or my shotgun. And I was using the BMF trigger activator. But the trouble with that is it goes into my trigger housing, and I can't feel my hands. I lose feeling in my biceps. So I'd have to look through my scope and then look at my hand to pull the trigger. Well, I found a different company called Be Adaptive out of Indiana, and they make a sip and puff trigger that's basically a straw, and you suck on it, and it uses a 12-volt system that pulls the trigger. So it's like a car window or a car lock. When you suck on the straw, it pulls the trigger for you. And that gave me a lot more control with rifle hunting, where you have to be a lot more precise. I still use the BMF trigger activator for my shotgun because I can kind of, pull it a little bit. But I use the sip and puff for my rifle. And, I'm shooting 1.5 inch groups at 100 yards. And as long as I have a little bit of time to get on a deer, I feel like I can be successful. I don't have a ton of movement, but my wheelchair has changed dramatically. I have an outdoor wheelchair. I originally started off with the Action Track chair, and it was just a little bit too wide for me. I had to trailer it everywhere. It's a great chair, and I know a lot of buddies still use Action Track, and I think they're a great company. But I switched 3 years ago to a Track Fab, which is made here in Pennsylvania, about an hour from my home, and it's only 30 inches wide, so I can get it into my adapted van. I can take both wheelchairs with me on trips. I can take this outdoor chair into hotel rooms with me to charge up at night, which is really funny if you want to see people's expressions change. I do a lot of hunting down in Maryland, and I got a great hotel there. The manager gives me a good break, but when I roll through the doors in my Track Fab with my gun mount on the front of it and my crossbow mounted, and I'm dragging leaves in his lobby and going in, it's just amazing. When people look at me and they're like, "Hey, did you get anything?" And I've been fortunate the last couple of years. I've been able to say, "Yeah, it's at the meat packer. I got this or that," and it's just a really good time. Technology's changed so much, and it's so much more reliable now. And I'm really thankful to have it.
It's cool. So it's safe to say you're having some fun with this. I mean, how cool, your friend that helped you build the mount, like how fun was that project? How exciting for both of you, right?
It's really awesome. He's a welder by trade, so everything's really, precision made. And we came up with the mount idea and then the sip and puff. And we also use a commercial mount on the front. It's a hog saddle that kind of keeps everything tight. And instead of zip tying and ratchet strapping down my rifle and crossbow, I'm using that hog saddle, and it really tightened up my groups because the gun's not moving around and I'm not kind of falling around. And we're on our third rendition of the mount. It's amazing. There's so many companies out there making commercial mounts, but they don't really fit each individual. So having a mount made, specifically for me made a big difference to me.
And have you, I have to imagine as you've encountered.
I can imagine it
go ahead,
sets your.
Go ahead, Tubbs. Thank you.
No,
you go.
I was just going to say, it's got to be nice. You be quiet now.
It really
it's got to be
is.
nice to have, to be able to set your eye relief, or get the correct eye relief. It's a custom mount just for you, and all you got to do is probably pull it right up to you, and it's right there. Not a whole lot of jockeying around to get things where it needs to go.
My chin falls right at the end of the mount, the end of the stock, and it's almost perfect alignment. But you can tell you're a shooter, Greg, because you mentioned eye relief. And that's one of the big issues if that, scope's not mounted right for me. A lot of times I'll have to modify the stock, using like an AR stock makes a big difference so that I can shorten it. But that's one of the big challenges for people with disabilities is getting good eye relief. And I stumbled upon Tacticams this year. I don't know if you guys are familiar with them or not. But a buddy of mine is
I've heard of them.
He's completely blind, and he recommended that I use the Tacticam. They're filmed through the scope, and it can connect to my iPhone. And then, eye relief's not so much of a problem. I can still see everything going on in the scope, and it uses just a remote control one button. So I'm even able to record my own hunts now, using the Tacticams and get, the eye relief that I couldn't get before on all the different guns. My shotguns are a little bit of a problem. I don't get the full sight picture, but I use it for turkey and pheasant, so it's not, that big of a deal, the eye relief on it anyway. But I'm learning as I go for eye relief. That's a big issue.
Man, there's so much to consider.
Pheasant
There's so many
has got
pieces.
to be an interesting challenge.
You first, Greg.
There's a local gun club. There's a local gun club that puts on a pheasant hunt for people with disabilities every year, and they actually put the birds out and kind of put them to sleep by tucking their head under their wing, and then they'll have the dog there.
Yep.
And when the dog points, then they kind of release the bird, and it gives guys like me an opportunity to get a couple of shots. I probably shoot a box of shells, but I come home with 3 pheasants, and I think that's just the greatest thing in the world. If I can get a couple of shots, and I'm happy whether I miss. If it's a clean miss, I'm happy. I definitely don't want to wound anything. But as long as I'm out there shooting, I'm having a good time.
Yeah, with your limited range of motion, I got to believe that's got to be a really great feeling to be able to take a bird down like a pheasant.
It's definitely a challenge, and I enjoy hunting out of a ground blind and getting set up for deer and turkey where I'm almost sitting in ambush where I've got 10 or 12 yards one way or the other, and then I can tilt my chair using the recline feature on it. About every 20 minutes or so, I have to recline my chair so that I get pressure off my bottom. Otherwise, I'd get a sore. So the wheelchairs that I use have a recline feature, and that kind of gives me my elevation whenever I'm hunting. But I basically have to pick out where I think that deer's chest is going to be at. And then whenever they, walk into the killing zone, I can kind of move a little bit one way, left or right. And if I turn my chair on, I can go up and down a little bit to get a good shot.
Sure.
And, it's amazing that it works out, but I've been really successful at it. I just have to take my time and really take an ethical shot. I'm such a stickler for that. I don't want to wound. I don't want to wound anything or, chase anything around all afternoon either. And spend a lot of time at the range, and it's fun. I consider it my therapy to be out, and there's no place I'd rather be than in the woods in October.
No doubt.
Sure.
One of my favorite.
So this has been an ultimate test of.
It's just that delay, Greg. It's not me, I swear. Go ahead, buddy.
Sorry, man. No, it's my end, I'm sure of it. It's been an ultimate test of your patience for sure. Then, being disabled, you're very limited in your movement. And like you said, you're trying to pick an ethical shot, or you're trying to pick that spot where you think the deer is going to offer a clean shot in the vitals. And I'm sure you have to pass on enough stuff to test your patience.
Greg, about 3 years ago, I was hunting with my friend Ricky Mills, and we had an absolute monster, one of the biggest deer I had ever seen hunting. And I needed him to take literally 2 more steps. I had the crosshairs of my crossbow at 23 yards on his neck, and he needed to take 2 more steps that I could have gotten a really good vital shot. And the doe behind him walked into the woods, and he turned around and followed her into the woods. And we got it all on film, and it was just, oh my God. If I was able-bodied, I could have shot that deer 10 different times. But it was so great being there, hunting, to have that opportunity. Now I was dying inside because I didn't get the shot, but it was an experience that I'll never forget, and probably talk more about the one that got away than the one you get, But you definitely have to have patience, and you can't take a bad shot. I mean, you owe it to the game. And I was so close to pulling the trigger. I just literally needed that buck to take 2 more steps. And sometimes you think they have a sixth sense about them,
Well, they definitely do.
Yeah.
It's really
They
ghostly
certainly
creatures.
do.
Yeah. I got to say, my favorite thing, about talking with you, Greg, so far is just, I'm a big believer in no excuses, and you are the king of that then. I mean, for anybody else out there not, disabled in any way, there's no excuse. And you've hunted plenty of states, and we're looking at the notes here that you got Pennsylvania, Illinois, Missouri, North Carolina, Texas, Maryland, and obviously Wisconsin too. You've done more disabled than I've done not, and it just makes you think. You need to appreciate every day that you get as a gift, and not only that, you've had a ton of success afield too. And we just talking about like bird hunting. I'm the worst bird hunting shot there is. I can't shoot sporting clays or trap to save my life. I don't know what the deal is. I just suck at it. But I probably haven't practiced enough or tried hard enough. And as we kind of navigate through the rest of the topic here, is there anybody that goes with you frequently for these things? That's kind of like your go-to. You mentioned some of your hunting buddies. And you have some notes here about some of your longtime friends. Is there anybody that you want to call out here and really just being there with you through all this?
Well, my friend Matt Cephas down in Maryland, he has some property, and he always invites me down every year to hunt Maryland. My brother John, I go hunting a lot with. My nephew Adam. We all kind of get together and go out and make things happen, and spend a lot of time at the shooting range. And I've got family and friends that are willing to go with me, and that's the important thing. Not giving up and finding ways to overcome, getting into the woods, or how do we do this or how do we do that. I'm really fortunate that I'm able to go a lot of places and hunt, and I get offered trips to go where people will say, hey, if you buy your license and pay the lodging, we won't charge a guide fee, that kind of thing. So I'm fortunate to be able to go on these trips, and the more people you talk with, and they realize that you're passionate about it, and that you're going to be a good guest and kind of do the right thing and not be out there, shooting at everything that moves, that you're kind of a lot like them, and people are more than willing to help you once they know that, you're passionate about the same things they are.
Yeah, I would echo that. How have you, what are some like gotchas? What are some things that we might not think about that you have to deal with? I know, if you go with some friends, maybe you have like a ground blind, but how do you navigate going by yourself? What kind of technology do you use to make sure you're communicating back with, friends and family, or how are you setting yourself up in the woods, for success? What does that look like?
Well, using my track chair, I'm able to, once we get to the hunting place, I can go and, my brother will set me up, put my crossbow in my mount. I have to plug in my trigger activator. One time I forgot to plug the trigger in, so I was just sitting there not being able to take any shots. So that was funny. There's kind of things that if you don't think about it, if you don't plug your trigger in, then you become a deer watcher, not a deer killer.
We all do that with
so that's always funny.
From time to time.
Yeah. The mount that I made to hold my rifle on or crossbow, I put some Velcro on it that I can Velcro my iPhone to it, and then I wear an earbud, and I can just have Siri, do the text message or make a call by voice in case of emergency. That's one of the things that if I am hunting by myself, I always make sure I have access to my phone and to be able to use Siri. That's been a lifesaver on that. Not being able to feel my extremities is a big issue. So when I go, archery hunting in November and it's super cold out, I got to make sure that I'm bundled up, that I have like a wool blanket that I put on my legs, and I wear boot blankets on my feet. And last year we started using the Mr. Buddy blind heater, which I thought would spook deer, but it didn't really have any issues. But you can't get your feet close to the heater or anything like that, and you have to be really careful with what the weather is and doing your weight shifts so that you don't get a skin sore and things like that. You have to be smart. When I was younger, I could hunt all day, but now I kind of go out in the morning for a little bit and then come back and get some lunch, or a lot of times I'll either wait and just go out in the afternoon and hunt the evening. That seems to be my most productive time, is going out about 2 or 3 in the afternoon and hunting till dark.
Nice. Those are, again, the things that I think some of us take for granted that we don't have to worry about, that you have to take extra precautions and considerations into your hunt on top of chasing an elusive game anyways. And, that just really goes to show that it's a passion that's deep within your bones, because you're willing to go through those extra steps because it fulfills you and fills your bucket and scratches that itch and that passion that you have. That's really great that you've been able to overcome so much with that.
You definitely have to have a good plan, and that, involves just leaving the house, whether you're going for an overnight or you're going for a week. There's a lot of medical issues that I have to take, supplies with me for that kind of thing, and wheelchair chargers and, extension cords to plug the chargers in, and you have to have an adapted van to be able to take the wheelchairs. And there is so much planning that goes into it, but that's half the fun. Mm-hmm. Even as an able-bodied hunter, I think when you're planning a big trip, you always make a hunting list and make sure you don't forget your shells and your license and, that kind of thing. There's just a few more things that you have to remember to take with you, but they are important. And some things you can buy at a local pharmacy or a local Rite Aid, but other things you want to make sure you have with you. And if it's really important, make sure you have two.
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it for everybody. The anticipation and the prepping and planning, I think I'm one to make analogies, and I think at one point I likened hunting to wedding planning that never stops, and I'm not sure that my wife really liked that analogy. But what I was saying is you spend so much time on the preparation, and then it all goes by in the blink of an eye when you get to the thing you're doing. But it's all worth it, and and if it wasn't for all that planning, it wouldn't have gone as well as maybe as it did. And if you didn't plan, that could have gone terribly. It's just that is almost all of the fun. In fact, some people have reported, allegedly, according to my wife, post-wedding depression. Once the big day is done, you're like, well, there's this big void missing because I don't have to plan something every day of the the year, so to speak. So for us as hunters, we always get something to plan.
There's always one more hunt to go on and plan for the next one.
Yeah, that's cool. Greg and I are quasi starting to plan for an elk hunt, I think. Right, Greg?
Yeah, looking forward to that. Right now, it's just a matter of locating an area and assessing gear, I think, and then getting off our butts and probably getting into better shape than what we are.
Yeah. The COVID stuff for the last 2 months. We talked about the atomic habits and changing a small, tiny, factor in your trajectory, and you're gonna end up in a totally different place. I gotta say, boy, oh boy, I could have been doing the last 2 months differently with working out or something, and I just haven't. And the result shows in my fat face on this podcast. I've packed on a couple pounds that are going to take some work to shave off. I don't want to shave my beard. I'll look like a different person.
That's your Scotch face.
I actually haven't been drinking that much. It's just Tuesdays. I've made it a thing. And honestly, this, get a shameless plug in here for these guys. This Drop Tine Spirits 12-point bourbon, it's doing its job. It is good. It is good. If you guys haven't tried this stuff, I recommend it. And in fact, Greg Traynor, this is in your neck of the woods. They're shipping out of New York. That's not far from you. You probably have a bottle of 12-point bourbon at your doorstep and lickety split. If you're into that, if you're into that.
Don't tempt me. I might. I definitely should place my order because I think I would enjoy that. I'm not a huge drinker, but I do like a good whiskey or a good bourbon, and I'd be giving it a try. You wouldn't have to twist my arm too much.
And the logo, like their logo is a real looker. I'll put it in front of the camera for those that are watching the live video. But that's a nice looking buck if I ever saw one. It's a beaut. It's a 12-pointer. That's pretty neat. But I suppose this
Can't go wrong.
No. This is as good a time as any. If you want to share with us your most memorable hunt, whether that's before the injury or after, I'm really excited to hear what you have to say for the story. We're just going to kick back and listen.
Well, I've gone on a number of hunts, before my injury and after, but I think I'd like to talk about 2 years ago. I went down to Maryland, and I was hunting with Matt Cephas, as I kind of mentioned earlier, but also had some buddies that were hunting from New York and New Jersey, Ricky Mills from Wild Jaeger and John McCallum, and they were hunting in Easton, PA, which was right close to Annapolis, and I was hunting on Matt's property. So we got together and we're able to kind of all link up, which that doesn't happen very often at all. So I had all of my buddies in one place, and we would go out for seafood and in the afternoon for lunch, and then go hunting. And Matt and I, you're able to hunt on a Sunday there. So Matt and I were hunting Sunday, and I killed a really nice deer using my 10-point crossbow. It was a 5-point. It wasn't a monster buck by any stretch of the imagination, but I made a nice shot on it on Sunday, and I was late coming back to dinner. I was meeting those guys at a seafood restaurant, and Matt and I came in, and they were like, "You're late because you killed something." And I was like, "Yeah, we got a nice buck." And it was just like a celebration. Everybody was happy, and it was kind of sticks in my mind, not because of the deer, but just because all of us were together. And Matt and I hunted together before my injury. We've been friends a long time, and I took my track chair through a swamp to a ground blind that he set up, and he was making all kinds of excuses saying, hey, this wasn't swampy when I put the ground blind out. And I was harassing him, telling him he was trying to get me stuck and giving him just a rash of shit about how bad of a spot it was. And we ended up killing a deer. And it was that back and forth thing with your buddies, you know. And I was telling him that we weren't going to kill anything. And then I ended up killing that deer. And he's like, well, we're back in here. How are we going to get this out? And I used my track fab to drag the deer out. And he was like, oh my God, I can't believe that chair is dragging this deer and all of your shit through the swamp. And it was just funny, you know. It was kind of like we were in our 20s again, not in our 50s. You know, it was funny. So I've got a lot of memorable hunts, but that was one that sticks in my memory. And then Matt sent me a picture of me and the deer in front of the ground blind, and I got it here on my wall, and I'm looking at it. So it's a memorable hunt that you hunt with, you know, friends and family, and it was a good time. So that's the one I'd like to talk about tonight, I guess.
That's great. The camaraderie of hunting has got to be one of the biggest draws. Yeah, Greg, go ahead.
Yeah, it's just like deer camp, you know, with all your good friends and family around you. Even if you don't shoot something, or if you shoot something that, you know, maybe you would been happier shooting something bigger, but you're just happy to be there, and you had the company and the camaraderie to make it that much better.
Oh, exactly. And, you know, the good thing about Maryland is you can get more than one buck. You can apply for a different tag. So whenever I had a good shot at the 5-point, it was still early in the week, and I thought, well, I'm going to, you know, take the shot. And if I get an opportunity, I'll hold off on a bigger deer. But I'm glad I took it, because that opportunity didn't come. I had seen a bunch of deer, but I wasn't able to turn and get on them, you know, the rest of the week. And, you know, people work really hard setting up ground blinds and cutting trails and things for me. And it's nice whenever I can be successful and, you know, get a shot. And it was just a great experience from, you know, the whole trip. I wouldn't change a thing on it.
Cool. I love that stuff. And it always popping in like local restaurants. I know last year for gun, Greg Tubbs, that you joined our gun hunting party, and we ended up going to some local diner, and the waitress, who we'd never been there. We've been hunting out of the same kind of area for 7 or 8 years now. And the diner was calling my dad, what was she calling him? Daddy-o? I mean, like, it's just simple things like that. That's indelible. That's what I'm remembering right now, is the waitress calling my dad Daddy-o. And so guess what? This year, November, I'm really looking forward to going back there. And if that same lady's there, we're like, oh, you're the one that called my dad Daddy-o. And it's going to become a thing. And that's fun. And that's the weird stuff that's not in the forest or the woods that is memorable, because you're spending it with people that you care about, you know, and you're having a good time with it.
Absolutely. It becomes a tradition, and you look forward to it, and you develop those relationships too. You know, whether it's at the hotel, you know, me dragging leaves through the guy's lobby and him laughing about it, because I go back every year, and, you know, I put on Facebook what a great time I have. And you develop relationships with people, and you look forward to it. And if that same waitress is there, you know, you're going to give her a good tip, and she's going to, you know, laugh about calling you Daddy-o and say, yeah, I remember you guys. And it'll be a really good time. I'm hoping she is still there for you.
Yeah, that's just it. So that's cool. I'm glad that that's what, you know, stood out for you as a memorable hunt. That's great to hear. We need more of that. And honestly, at least here in Wisconsin, gun hunting really kind of brings that out. We, you know, bow hunting is a little bit more of a ninja sport. You're kind of going at it alone, and you're really kind of trying to conceal yourself and this and that. And gun hunting is you're going out with the fellas and the group and the fam and, you know, everybody else. It's more of a group effort. And the bow hunting, you might go with like maybe one buddy here and there, but you know, that camaraderie piece is a big deal that people kind of forget sometimes, or don't, maybe it doesn't stand out as much. And it really does usually, but just people don't talk about it as much, I guess.
Right.
That's cool. That's cool. How do people, we'll wrap up. How do people find you? How do they get in touch? You obviously have a lot to offer, a lot of knowledge to share. for anybody that, is going through anything or had some sort of accident, or they're learning how to, navigate a new lifestyle, how do they reach out to you? I'm assuming you're very willing and open to help people out.
Oh, absolutely. That's why I actually started Accessible Hunter, was to, provide information for people and be a resource. The best way to get a hold of me is probably on Facebook on my Accessible Hunter page. I also have an Instagram page, Accessible Hunter, and a buddy of mine, Mike Hudson, and I started a podcast recently, just a couple episodes, but Accessible Hunter podcast. So anytime you Google Accessible Hunter, I'm probably going to pop up, and I'd be more than willing to, give people my opinion or my ideas. And if I can help anybody get back in the outdoors and to get hunting in it again, that's my passion, and I'd be more than happy to talk with anyone.
That's great. I think that's how we linked up, was Instagram, if I'm not mistaken. It could have been Facebook, but I know recently it was Instagram.
No, it was definitely Instagram. I've been looking at your grilling pictures. You've been grilling some great steaks. I'm a little jealous of today. That was a heck of a barbecue you were putting on.
I am learning. I have really no idea what I'm doing, but it's been really fun to experiment with that thing. And my wife's been very happy with the results. So I guess if she's happy, I'm happy. But it's fun. Thanks for following along.
It looks awesome.
Greg, Tubbs, when are you going to get a pellet grill?
Good question. Probably gonna wait till this other one dies and take care of a few other things around the house first, like the garage door opener that just died this weekend. It's another project to worry about. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I might have to come kill your grill for
soon
you.
enough.
We'll just say, oh, I don't know what happened. It must have died. Don't tell your wife.
Well, it's all right. I got the old school Weber. I can cook like a caveman too if I have to.
Yeah, I got one of those. They're good. Well, Greg, Traynor, thanks so much for being on the show. I'm going to end the live feed here, but thanks for everything you shared with us. Honestly, man, you're a real inspiration. You're not like any other guest we've ever had on before, and I appreciate you so much for taking time to be on the show and for following along too. Hopefully everyone go check out Greg's podcast and hear what he has going on, and go follow his Instagram and YouTube and Facebook.
Thank you so much, Eric and Greg. I really appreciate you guys having me on and let me tell my story. And I'll definitely keep following you guys. I appreciate everything you're doing, and I look forward to listening and seeing more of you guys. Thanks again.